Ask Andy. Right.
I've got my cushions back as well.
Well, there you go. What about, and we've done this before on a course where we've said to you, I'm stuck. This is off piste now. Stuck.
That's normal for
I know.
you and I, Ronnie.
Stuck on an A chord for 4 bars. What would you do to make it a little bit more interesting rather than just strummy?
Okay.
So you're stuck on an A board, just an A chord, A major chord.
I'm just messing around, but like, if you could just stay stationary with one shape and then just try. I mean, there was one I played where we had the minor third and the major third, which is creating dissonance.
But as a transient thing, you could move to it.
But it really resolves to.
Yeah. I remember one you did once, and you kept it simple for us. You said, let's start on I think you had the A add 9, and then you gradually took it down to an A, then major 7th, and then
okay.
an A6,
so what do we do?
Then to an A6. It sounded beautiful.
A major 7,
then A6,
or A dominant 7.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, actually, okay. So let's try and keep this with confined.
There's a lot of chord stuff here.
There's a lot of chord stuff here. What we have is a chord, which in this case is a triad, 3 notes, and a chord is built up. You can have 4. I call them the God chords. I think we both call them that. So you got a major chord, a minor chord, a diminished chord, and an augmented chord, and then all our other chords are kind of based upon those 4 God chords. And we don't want to go into too much detail, but let's say let's say you're at a point in the concert and you're accompanying a singer, and you've worked out the set list, and you've got to the song where you know that the singer wants to talk about something, but they don't want it to be completely silent. So you're segueing from one song to the next, but your job is just to create something that's going to lead into the song, but is nice. And I'm not just doing this. Which is just a bit too stationary behind her or him.
How would you do that if you were strumming it? So, because that's a nice finger pick. Nice and soft.
Da, 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 da. And notice I'm just alternating up and down there. But just to go back to how I could utilize chord knowledge, and you don't even need to have that much knowledge, but let's say the chord is made up of 3 notes within the scale, but also we have a chromatic scale between A and A, but we started on the 9th. Now we didn't go completely chromatic, but we went the 9th. Now what's the 9? Well, if there are 8 notes in an octave, 7 different notes in the scale, okay, and you're in your key, we're just doing 2 octaves, so we're thinking the key signage A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, back to B. Here's the B, so I'm adding the 9th because I've still got all the other notes within the triad. We're not going to go into what the difference is between add 9 and sus at the moment, but we'll do that another time. So I'm barring the A, and I'm missing the F sharp. Okay, I'm adding the B, which is the add 9. Getting rid. So now I've got movement within the chord.
In fact, just going between those 2 is very pretty.
It's really pretty, but then you could go to the major 7th, dominant 7th, which is a major chord with a minor 7th. Now I'm thinking, right, I'm going from a G to the F sharp. That's essentially you indicating the chord of D, isn't it, really? You're indicating
it's like a D over A,
a D over A, in a way, but we're going to call it A6 because we're just doing chromatic movement. There's the F, so you're going down to that F. So that could be called a couple of different things, couldn't it, really? Because you could either call that with a sharp 5, or you've got a flattened 6. So how would what would you decide to call it? Just remember that chord names can have multiple names as well, depending on the key you're in.
That's in our newsletter all the time.
Is it?
It's every time I do a challenge in the newsletter, the last line is, it's a bit artistic, this name calling. It's not scientific. You can call it multiple things. So here's my suggestions for names.
Yeah.
And I always get clobbered by people because they'll say it's wrong.
But you had a good one yesterday. I mean, we're going off piece again. We'll come back. But basically, we've shown you there what you can do with one chord, okay? And then also, just to take it further, why wouldn't I do the same kind of idea?
Do you know what you used to look? You just really experiment for people who don't know what they're doing. If they just move the fingers around a little bit round the chord, see what happens.
I'm not, I
just
thought,
see what
that
happens.
was a bit. I wasn't so sure about that. But then I think, well, hang on a second. Even though it sounds like it's not quite working, as long as I just keep moving, that distance becomes a transition between 2 points.
Yeah.
Just don't stay on it forever. I think experimentation of hearing how things sound so that you can then play what you hear in your head, even if you don't have all the knowledge of what it is you're doing. I don't think, Lennon McCartney sat there going, I'm going to go through I'm going to think about my cycle of keys now.
It's interesting. We're
not thinking like that.
We're going to do a little chat about chord diagrams. And, all of us, we see these chord diagrams and we pick up a book when we first start, and they're sacrosanct. They never change. That's it. But actually there's more to that than meets the eye.
There is. We'll do that in a minute. But
in a minute.
Also, just going back to this one chord thing, there's something. There's a video if you look up Nathan. Is it Nathan East, bass player? I think he has somebody says, "What would you do if you had to stay on one chord for like half an hour?" I went, loads. There's loads, because we've just done one feel. Couldn't you just be like? So now I'm keeping like a kind of like, suppose kind of a rocky kind of partly palm muted kind of effect. I know we're on an acoustic, but now my movement, instead of being kind of in the middle of the chord, is towards the bottom. That's totally different to what we just played. What about keeping a static chord? And doing the movement underneath the chord. I wish I'd fingered this differently now, but... That sounds like the beginning.
So you've
of a
kind
song.
of done the middle of the chord.
Yeah.
And then you've done the bottom. What about the top?
Let's make it really clear. So we've got a static chord and we're putting movement within that chord, but in different positions. We've done it in the middle of the chord. We've done it below the chord, so we're getting slash chords. We can put it above the chord.
Yeah, so you can now start looking at scales.
So why don't you start thinking, well, if I take this whole shape here, okay, so I could do it with a cage triad. That's great. Within it. Above it, that's the scale, isn't it? So here's the scale of A. Within that position, well, can I not just try doing
play the scale with the back chord?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep the chord, just go 1, and just pluck 3 strings with the bass note underneath. Now the middle 3. Now I'll add. When I get to here.
That's nice.
So now I'm adding in, so I'm essentially then doing chord 4 in the key of A, but I'm doing D over A. But if we just think of it as A, and I'm doing A6, but I'm adding in movement still, I could keep that. Ooh. that actually wants to resolve to D because of the dissonance. But it's all. I think it's just trialing stuff, isn't it? Really, it's very interesting.
I think it's really good. And we all hit. You're staying on a chord for a while. I think the advice is just play around with it a little bit.
Play around with it.
Experiment.
And we're going to cover this in the next video. But learn the cage system. So that you know your chords within different positions, and then do the same exercise but in multiple positions.
But you don't need to go back to your chord book. You've got your A chord. Just play around with the fingers and see what happens. If it doesn't sound right, then it's not right.
And know what the notes are within a chord.
Yeah.
Like there is a great benefit to having some knowledge of theory, and then that just gradually increases. I'm still learning stuff, because I didn't study electric and I didn't study jazz. So how do I get it?
Do you know it's interesting, this? Because one of the other things we want to cover in another talk is going from this level of player to this level of player to this level of player, and all this other stuff you just mentioned about knowing the notes, knowing the intervals, and all that stuff. It goes up, doesn't it? And the more 100%. You know, the better you'll get.
The better you'll get. Yeah. If you look at the difference with George Harrison's songs within the certain period of the Beatles and maybe Lennon's or McCartney's, you can kind of see that he's maybe studied the guitar more just in terms of his use of movement. Something in the way she moves affects me that I can no other lover. Well, that's a secondary dominant. What's a secondary dominant? You start going into all of that. But what you don't want to do is get stuck in the theory. Theory should be knowledge that can be applied to your playing.
And you don't want to be stuck with a chord book.
No,
just having this great big thick chord book all the time. It's learn the basics and then play around with them a little bit. Use fingers that you're not using in a chord and just see what. And if you stretch it out a little bit, what happens? Just try it.
We'll do an exercise in one of follow-up videos, which is going to be like, well, what's a 1-6-2-5, and how can I turn that into multiple exercises in one position?
Good. And on that happy note, we'll call that quits.
See you later.
Toodaloo.